So just to start out, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carina Self. I am the Dean of Graduate Studies and Academic Effectiveness at Granite State College. And I'm here with my colleague, Kathy, and she'll introduce herself in a second. So I'm coming in from my phone because I wasn't working with my computer. So I cannot see whether the poll has been completed or not. So if one of the other hosts could let me know.
I am I'm sharing the results right now.
Excellent. All right. So the first thing we asked you was how many jobs have you had in your career so far? And it looks like the majority of folks have had 1 to 3. And then there's about 34%, 4 to 6. And then the rest is 7 or more than 10. All right. That's awesome. We had another poll question about career changes. So the difference between a job change and a career change would be changing the field that you're working in or the area of expertise that you have. So instead of moving up the line in different roles in the same career, you'd be changing to a different kind of thing. So moving from, say, education to healthcare, or going from business to nonprofit. So the next poll is just asking how many career changes. Okay. And can you guys launch the next poll?
So they're both listed there, Carina. I don't know if you can see the second one. I had to scroll up. So we're both on devices.
Oh, here we go. So you did answer that one. Terrific. So most people have changed once or maybe twice. And it looks like there's some folks who haven't changed careers at all. And then we have a significant group of people who've changed career fields more than 3 times. So that's great. Thanks for that information. Anna, do you want to go to the next slide?
I can't see the slides. Let me see. Okay, great.
Great. So there's not a lot of great information out there about how many times people change careers. What we do have really good information about is how many times people change jobs. So sometimes you'll see information out there that says people change careers 12 times in their life. Well, in actuality, it's about job changes. And sometimes those job changes are moving from one career field to another, and sometimes they're job changes within the same career field. But what the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so that's a national tracking of jobs and who has what jobs, tracks is actually job changes. And in the 2019 survey of baby boomers, the average number of jobs they had in their lifetime was 12. And the median employee tenure that folks had overall, and this is not just baby boomers, was about 4.3 years for men and 4 years for women. So we don't know what the average job changes in a lifetime are going to be for younger generations because, you know, we're not done yet. All right, next slide. So one thing we do know is that sometimes the approach to jobs and work changes during recessions. So we're officially in a recession now, and one of the things that a lot of people do during recessions traditionally has been returning to school. So there's some evidence out there to say that that might not be the main thing that people do during this recession, in part because a lot of people already have a lot of money in loans. But it's still going to be a time when people are going to try to upskill. So employers are also starting to accept other kinds of credentials besides degrees. So some of the things that they might look for on your resume would be participation in a MOOC, which is a large open enrollment online class, or maybe badges that you've got to demonstrate that you have certain skills. Also, short-term certificates are another option. Those are particularly popular for people who only have a high school diploma and want to gain a specific job skill. But there's also starting to be more certificates offered at the post-bachelor's level, and even certain kinds of credentials that you can get between getting a master's degree and a doctorate. There's also a lot of online training available. So through platforms like Salesforce or LinkedIn Learning. So if you have access to some of those kind of platforms, that can be another place to upskill. And a really great place to gain a new skill set, if you're looking to do that, is through volunteerism. Actually, my wife got her first job in a new career field by volunteering as a fundraising person with a small nonprofit. She ran an event, and that got her foot in the door to be a development person as opposed to an educator. So that's a great way to learn new skills and to demonstrate that you have those skills.
So I think we already ran this chat, but our next question was, which job do you want, or what job would you want in the next 3 years? Typically we would ask 5, but looking at the last couple of slides ago where it said people stayed in a job for only 4 years, what jobs do you want in the next 3 years? Could you post that in the chat? I'm going to see if I can pull the chat up. Oh dear. You know, we use Zoom all the time on our computers, but we don't use them on our devices at work all the time. So let me see if I can, there we go. Okay.
If it's easier too, Kathy, I think that Lori can help to share anything that people post in there.
Okay, great.
So, Kath, what are you looking for? You just looking for some of these dream jobs?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. We have some people would like to be full-time volunteers at different organizations. There is an individual that AmeriCorps members interested in doing that kind of work. There is volunteer coordinator at the Castle in the Clouds would like, her dream job would be a part-time outdoor trainer for botany and wildlife. Some sustainability careers have been listed. Trainer, consultant, coordinator, another sustainability coordinator. HR, dream job would be an HR, almost there. Congratulations for you. Photojournalist and doing public relations for a ski resort.
Okay, so that sounds great. And you know what? Thank you, Lori. I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Kathy DesRoches. I am the director of the MS in Leadership program at Granite State College. For people who don't know what Granite State College is, it's part of the university system, but we're a college that has changed names a couple of times, and our main focus is for working adults. We have a lot of online courses, and we have some face-to-face, but given the COVID activity, all the courses we have the rest of the year are online. And then I have at the master's degree level, I'll have some intensive courses, so you could come over a weekend and earn your degree. You have to do a little work before and a little work after, but it is a great way to sort of fit college into the nooks and crannies of your life. I also want to tell you what we're going to do today is that we're going to walk through the process. So we've identified a dream job. We're going to look at, from there, sort of how do you determine what skills are needed to do that job? So then you can fill some gaps in your resume, and then how to fill those gaps. So we'll give you some ideas about doing that. Then we'll develop a plan so that you can get to that dream job. And then how to improve your resume so that when it goes into the online, when you submit it online, that somebody actually will look at it. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, great. So I spent a lot of time talking with our person who works in career development at Granite State College about just if she had any information to share. And her name is Jan, and we'll have it in the slides. And she's offered her services to anyone, no pressure. She just loves doing career development, and the college doesn't mind that she does that. So she said the one thing that people often do is they'll look for external factors. So what you might say now is, look, I'm looking for a new job. I see that there is a lot of need for contact tracing. So I'll just go on a MOOC and learn how to be a contact tracer and then get a job. But she suggests what you do is that you look for sort of what she calls sweet spot. You identify what your passions, interests, and abilities are, and then find a job that fits within there. So you'll be the most satisfied, and you won't have to contend with burnout, being burnt out or bored. Next slide, please. So this is a tool that we have at the college. And again, we have more licenses than we can use. And she offers this if you want to go ahead and try it and find out where your sweet spots are. It also has some information. Let me just go ahead in my notes here. We're working on 3 different things about career assessments, salary info for jobs. It will let you know if it's a growing field. It will also show some realistic videos about what the job is. So sometimes you think, I want to be, I'll just say marketer because this came up earlier. But once you see what marketing really is all about, you might say, maybe that's not the right fit for me. And then this Cooter also has information about scholarships. So next slide.
By the way, Kathy, these links are being posted in the chat. So the one for gsc.cooter.com was posted with the code on it. So if there were any links you were seeing in those slides, just scroll through the chat. You should be able to see them.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
So Kathy offered the access to our Cooter Journey program as one way that you can learn about what is entailed in a particular job. But I was interested in having people share with one another some of the ways that you get information about jobs. So if you could post in the chat maybe some of the things that you've done in the past to learn about what is entailed in a job, or maybe some of the things that you're learning to do now. Oh, net online.
While people are doing that, there is a question. Jonathan would like to know, can you elaborate on the benefits of badges and Salesforce Trailhead experience that employers are looking for?
So what I can tell you about Salesforce and LinkedIn is that when I spoke with our career advisor, those were 2 areas that she recommends for free training. Well, LinkedIn, I don't think it's exactly free. I think you have to pay for a membership. We have it free at work. As far as badges, there is an indication that employers are looking for badges because a badge, unlike a college degree, lists what your skills are or what your competencies you have, where a college degree could be a little more ambiguous. We haven't really seen, or personally, I've done a lot of research about badges, and people always talk about the need for them, but I haven't really seen any jobs that ask for particular badges. So I'm unsure. What about you, Carina?
Well, I think some fields value them more than others. So I would say particularly in high-tech fields, there's a lot of value to certain kinds of badges. It's also another way to identify yourself as someone who's looking for a particular kind of work. So if you can, get your badge on your LinkedIn page and you can start to put yourself out there as someone who has skills in a particular area, especially if you're trying to shift from doing, certain kind of work to another kind of work, it can start to signal to recruiters and people that might be looking at your LinkedIn profile that that's something that you're interested in. And it can also give you some base level skills to try to give you a chance to try something out without a really high cost. And then if you decide it's something that you really love to learn about, then you can decide to maybe get a higher credential in that area. So using project management as an example, you could get some kind of certification or badge in project management that's kind of a low-level certification before you take the leap of getting, a certified project management type of credential, or before you go back and get a graduate certificate or a degree. So that's kind of how I think about badges. Is there like a low risk entry point into something?
So Carina had asked people to put into the chat where they get information about jobs, and we have ONET online, informational interviews with people in the field, word of mouth, networking, online research. Somebody else went to the webpage of a company to see what was open and to learn more about that company. LinkedIn, Indeed, Handshake, also word of mouth. And then somebody wanted to know what a badge was, and another member of this webinar answered it. And American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, idealist.org, and journals related to the field all came up as suggestions on where people learn about their job opportunities and skills needed.
Okay, so can we go to the next slide? Oh, sorry, Carina.
That's okay. I was just going to hand it to you.
Oh, great. So many of these things that you've already talked about or mentioned, Jan, our our career specialist, mentioned places like Indeed. And what she said to do is not just look in your small geographical area, but to look and do a wider, broader search, because what might be needed in a wider area is not needed now, but it might show you a trend that's coming up later on. And these other ones you mostly mentioned, the informational interview is a good way to sort of touch base with somebody, and mentors, of course, and we'll come back to that a little bit later in the presentation. So Carina's going to talk about ONET Online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so several of you mentioned ONET as a possible place where you can look for career information. What's really nice about ONET is it's a very reliable source. The data is gathered by the federal government, and it's actually, ONET stands for the Occupational Information Network. It's developed and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor and the Employment and Training Administration. And it's the grant for developing it is through the North Carolina Department of Commerce, but it covers data for the entire country. So if you look at this slide, the first thing you'd want to do if you were kind of trying to find information about a specific job is you could go to ONET Online and you type the occupational area in the top search bar. Next slide. And we just thought we'd show you what the search might look like and how you get narrowed down to a specific job. So the next thing you're going to see would be a list of, potential jobs in the nonprofit sector. So a couple of people mentioned wanting to get into development, so public relations and fundraising, fundraising specifically, chief executives, managers, and social and community service managers. So you can see there's also some tags on some of these areas. So the little sunshine tag means that there's a bright outlook. That means there are a growing number of jobs and growing possibilities in that field. There's also the green tag, which means there's the possibility of doing environmentally sustainable jobs in that area. So if you go, if you were to click through on social and community service managers, then you get to a summary report. And I'm sorry, this is a summary report for general and operations managers. And this is one of the jobs where there's a bright outlook. So there's growing potential in this field. And it's also, there's the potential for environmentally sustainable jobs. So it kind of describes what the job is. It gives you a summary. And then there's just all kinds of great information here about the kind of tasks you would be expected to do, the technological skills you might need, and you might not necessarily need all of these things. So don't think of this as a checklist, but think of these as some of the kinds of things that might show up on job listings in this field. So if you go to the next slide. It also gives you, and this is something we're going to talk a little bit more about throughout the presentation, a list of some of the skills that are mentioned frequently when people are listing jobs in this area, some of the skills you're going to need to be successful. Also some of the abilities and the activities that you would be expected to do on a regular basis. And you'll notice that some of these things are very broad, like oral comprehension. And it defines that, but that could mean a lot of different things in a lot of different jobs. So if you're working in a job right now that requires that you do a lot of work on the phone, then that's a different kind of oral comprehension than if you were required to do a lot of your work face-to-face. So communication can be different in different modalities. It could also be very different depending on where you are. So if oral communication is a skill that's required for a job in Texas or Arizona, that might include oral comprehension in Spanish. So that's another thing to take into account, is what some of these skills might mean in different places and in different settings. It also gives you some of the detailed kinds of work activities you might be expected to do. And then if you go into the final, I think this might be the final slide, it gives you the kind of preparation you might expect to need in those roles. So most of the jobs would require a 4-year bachelor's degree, but some don't. And again, this can be something that can vary a lot from field to field, from area of the country. So that's something where if you went on one of the sites and kind of looked at how are the jobs in New England different from the jobs in, say the Southeast, you might have a different level of expectation for job preparation depending on where you are. And then we also get some related occupations. So if this doesn't sound like quite the job for you, but you still want to be in this general area, maybe you'd want to look at some of these other areas of employment. And finally, the last section, which is really nice, is the wages and employment trends. So we all have to pay the bills. And sometimes you need to know, can you afford to live on what this job would pay you? So looking at the median wages, and you can look at that nationally. You can also look at it by state, and you can look at it locally by zip code. So that's really helpful, especially if you want to be in a particular area of the country, or you want to stay in the state you're in, or if you're planning to relocate, helping you figure out like what's reasonable to expect to be paid if you're going somewhere else. You can also get some trend data. So is there anything else that you thought we should highlight about ONET, Kathy?
No, I think that you've covered most of it. No, I think you've done a great job. Thank you. All right, so we had a question. Someone sent me a message privately asking for the Cooter information. So Anna's just reposting that for people, and it's in the chat. So I had sent out a survey. I think you must have gotten it late last week, and asked you what you believe your skill level is in these areas. And the reason that we asked about these areas is twofold. One is we know that that leaders, and I work in the leadership area, have this level of skills in these areas that make them successful leaders. The other reason we ask this is the combination of these skills also shows that somebody would have high emotional intelligence. So high emotional intelligence is also something that we see as being very valuable for somebody who is a leader. And generally when we think about the next step in a job level, we often think about more leadership skills that are needed. So can you go to the next slide? So I sent the survey out late last week. This is the information from yesterday, and I noticed we got a handful. I looked this morning and I didn't have time to incorporate them, but we got a handful of responses after. So we ended up with, this data is about 63 responses, or 47%, which is really an impressive number. So thank you all for participating in the survey. Can you go to the next slide? So this is how you identified. I didn't give you the years. So sometimes I saw two different sets of years for millennials and Gen X, but this is just how you identified. Gen Z. We only had 3 people from Gen Z do the survey. So the numbers I'm going to give you probably are not that representational because it's only 3 people. But I think it's interesting to just include those anyway. But you can see that most of the people are millennials that participated in the survey. So I broke the jobs that you're into sort of groups because I noticed that there are a lot of different kinds of coordinators, a lot of different kinds of program directors and program managers. So you can see where you fall in this group. And you can see if you're thinking about that next job, there are people who are probably on this list and on this call who could help you if you need information or maybe even mentor you. Next slide. So this is overall where you felt like you had room to grow in your skill levels. Now, so these are looking at the people who scored themselves as neutral, strongly disagree, or disagree. And it's sort of all over the place. The thing that I found a couple of things pretty interesting on this when I looked at it. And one is resilience. And so people generally did not rate themselves very high at resiliency. And I would say you are living in COVID times. You might be working from home. You might have children who you're trying to homeschool at the same time. You're trying to figure out how to get groceries and see your friends without putting anyone at risk. I think most people on this call are extraordinarily resilient for just living through this year. It's been a very emotional year and very trying in a number of ways. As far as team building and motivation, We have a really great class, but if you don't have that a really great team building class, but if you don't have the money, nor do you want to return to school, I know that Coursera has some good courses that are free, and they only cost money if you want to get a certificate or a badge. And then mentoring, we can talk about that in a few minutes. The key thing about all these skills is they're all skills that you can develop. So even if you think you're low in an area right now, is that you can improve and get to that strongly agree or agree area. Next slide, please. There we are. And so there we are when we look at the different generations. And I found it interesting that, again, that millennials gave themselves the highest room for growth and inclusion and self-awareness. So I don't really take anything away from that. I just want to point that out, and I really don't think that it really means a lot. Maybe they just feel like they need to know the most about inclusion. I think most of us have been have learned a lot in the last 3 to 4 weeks. So, but I thought I'd share this information. Can you go to the next slide? So this is Carina.
Hi. So the next section, Kathy mentioned the fact that there are probably people on this call who could help you in whatever next career move you're thinking about. So we wanted to give you a chance to meet some of the other people on this call and have a more intimate conversation. So we're going to give you some questions to discuss, but let me give you a few instructions first. First of all, in each of the rooms, it'd be great if you could designate a facilitator. And that person's job is just to make sure that everyone feels comfortable participating, that everyone's having a chance to express themselves. The groups are going to be small enough that you should be able to just have more of a conversational tone and not have to post everything in chat. But the facilitator can help you make that as smooth as possible. And then also we'd like you to designate a recorder, and that person can take some notes that then can be shared out with the larger group when we come back together. One thing I would ask is sometimes people don't feel comfortable going into these smaller groups and they leave the webinar altogether when this happens. So if that's where you are, I'd say just take a 15-minute break and come back, because there's some things at the end of the session that you might want to have and some resources that you might want to take advantage of. So the instructions for the breakouts are to review the survey results, or what you think your results would have been if you didn't take the survey, and to look at an area where you've experienced some growth, and what did you do to grow in that way, an area where you feel you need to continue to grow, and that you want to do more of so that you can grow in that area, and what would you like to leave in the past? What are some things that are maybe things that you've learned to do and you think, if I could stop doing those, that would really help me move forward in this area. So if you were the designated recorder in your small group, please write some insights into the chat. Great opportunity to network. That's wonderful. Thanks, Sarah. Other things that people realized, learned, became more aware of in the small groups.
So, Carina, we forgot to follow the rules. So we forgot to.
All right, we're still getting some stuff we're still getting some good stuff in the chat. Our group would like more experience in team and project management, as well as getting back to direct service roles versus behind the scenes work. Yeah. Negative self-talk is a challenge across a variety of age groups. Absolutely. Our group would like to continue to do more networking. All right, that's good. We had a great conversation, and we're able to talk a lot about how we would like to have started work on breaking out tasks in our day. Oh, good. Right, I don't have to read all these out loud, but they're coming in fast and furious now. Thinking about removing barriers, not only for ourselves, but for our peers as well. Absolutely. Easy to offer. Team building can be a challenge. Zoom and working remotely is actually helping with some professional development goals. That's interesting. Yeah. 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 I have to say that last comment from Callie, transitions have been challenging when you're switching from being self-reliant and being a team member where you're not the only decision maker. That's true across the career span. Because in a lot of jobs, you're switching back and forth between those things in the same job. So, yep. All right. So leaving behind the corporate world and focusing on how to benefit and help others. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I've worked in the nonprofit world my whole life. And in fact, some of those corporate skills come in handy sometimes. And that's an area where I feel like I could stand to grow. Things like budgeting and project management and things. So great. Well, we hope that that experience was useful to you all. And Michaela, is there a way, if people felt a strong connection with the other folks in their group, that they could communicate with each other? Will you be sending out a list of who was in the workshop, or how would they be able, if they don't remember someone's name, would there be a way for them to go, oh, that was the person, Christine, da, da, da?
Yeah, mute Michaela, just in case you weren't aware.
Oh, so some people already shared their contact information and connected via LinkedIn. All right.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
Good job.
I don't think we're planning on sharing contact lists, since that's not something that we got permission for people from. So if you see each other's names in the chat box here, this is a good time to try and
but they can
make some
privately chat. They can privately
can't
chat
privately
each
chat, but if you now, while you have the contact list present, if you can look up the person on LinkedIn or something, that's probably the best way to go.
You can also look at Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, they could probably look at the participant list too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to offer to, if people want to offer themselves as for informational interviews, or if they think they want to offer themselves as a mentor, or if you're looking for an informational interview or a mentor, if you wanted to send your name to me and what you're looking for, I would not mind keeping a little spreadsheet and sending that information out to people and helping people to connect. So my name will be on a slide coming up. And it's kind of a tough spelling for some people. So I'm going to make that offer. Oh, Leslie, can you just send it to me in an email? Or unless that's just for your group, I don't know. Okay, so are we ready to go to the next slide, Carina?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know how we're doing for time. Oh, we're getting, all right. So this is two things. Anna's going to share a document with you. It's just a little newsletter article that I wrote for the Concord Chamber of Commerce. And that will give you some kind of quick and dirty ways to improve your skills in certain areas that we've already talked about that are related to emotional intelligence. And we know that people who have good emotional intelligence, which can be developed, are better leaders. There are also a couple of things that I had noted. So I wrote down that, yeah, people are interested in teams and mentoring. And so those are also on the list. No, they're not. But I would recommend that you go to Coursera or something similar, or come to us for that information. So there's this link Anna's going to also put in the chat. And this is a document that our our career specialist shares. And it's a way to sort of look at, where you're at now, where you want to go, and sort of what steps you need to take to get there. Anna, can you go to the next screen? Next slide. And so this just tells you this is what the document is, sort of how to plan ahead to get you to the end goal of where you want to be. And then when you feel like you're there, can you go to the next slide? And you're ready to submit your resume. Oh, sorry, one more. Great. And you're ready to select your next, you're ready to submit your resume. Most people are now using applicant tracking systems. So if you go to the next slide. So what an applicant tracking system does is it looks for, it's like a web crawler, I guess. It just looks for keywords and matches keywords on your resume with keywords in the job description. So we also have this tool which you can use and no one will contact you, where you can upload the your job application or your resume, and you can upload the job ad, and you can see what the match is. Sometimes, you know, if you get your mom or your grandma or your Uncle Harry to look at your resume and give you some feedback, it might look really nice and be really well written. But if the web crawler is not going to pick you up, it doesn't matter what it says. So you want a score of at least 70%. And this will provide suggestions on how to improve your resume to make you more, to get your score higher so that someone really looks at it. And it also has some templates about, you know, how to follow up with people, thank you notes, and sample resumes. So again, that's another tool. And I don't know if that went through on the chat or not. No, it's not only available to students, not that I know of. She said anybody can use it.
The link has been posted there, the resumeawarded.com.
Okay, great. I think from what it sounds like, anyone can use it. But again, if you find that you run against a roadblock, check with Jan and she'll walk you through it. And like LinkedIn, there's the free stuff and then there's the stuff you have to pay for. So this is just for the free stuff, I believe. Okay, can you go to the next slide? So we just wondered if you could give us some feedback, if you could put that in the chat. And while you're doing that, oh, I don't have my chat open, sorry. Oh yeah, so Melinda, it's available to everyone as far as I know. Yeah, thank you. So, you know, if you didn't get all of the resources or you missed one, reach out to either myself or Anna or Lori or Carina and we'll set you up. We'll also send you the slides if you'd like the slides. This is all of our contact information. And Jan offered to have me include her contact information if you want to set up an appointment with her. Obviously, they're all online via Zoom. And so, Carina, do you want to take the next couple of slides?
Sure. Yeah, we just, so we've mentioned a few times some of the resources that we have at Granite State College. This isn't a sales pitch, but we did want to let you know that in terms of shorter term opportunities to learn, we have some new certificate programs. So I don't know if, are you on that slide? I'm looking at the chat. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So one of them is a certificate in nonprofit leadership, and Kathy is the program coordinator for that, as well as for the leadership master's degree. So you can look and see there's a couple of required courses, and then you can choose one elective. So it's 3 courses. Our semesters are pretty short, and you could get through 3 courses in, let's see, Kathy, how long would that take? 6 months? 6 to 9 months, depending on which terms you go. So that's a pretty short time commitment, and there's some great classes there. We also have a new certificate in healthcare management, and there's some courses. You can choose any 3 from that list of courses.
We do have,
and we have,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's those courses are part of our master's degree in healthcare management. Is that what you're going to say, Kath?
And we have some healthcare people on the call.
Yeah, great. And we have the contact information here for these programs if you're interested. The other thing we have a lot of people do is come and just take 1 class, and you can do that as a non-degree student. As long as you're not looking for financial aid, you can take as many classes as you want as a non-degree student. Actually, I think we're limiting it to 4, but usually by that time you've decided if you want to do the degree or not. And then we also have a certificate in project management. I know a lot of people have talked about wanting to gain project management skills, and these 4 courses are actually designed to give you everything you would need if you needed to get the the certification, PMP, the professional project management certificate that would help. It's not a prep for the test, but it is the basic foundational knowledge in project management. So those are going to be available as full certificates starting this fall. But if you want to get started early, our summer semester starts in like 10 days. So some of the courses you could take non-degree this summer and then roll them into the certificate in the fall. But you can contact folks in this, and we have professional advisors who could walk you through the whole process. Or you can contact Kathy or myself. We're happy to connect you with the right folks. But again, I mean, I hope we've offered you with a lot of different resources and a lot of different possibilities, because not everything has to be a formal class or formal education. You can do a lot on your own, but sometimes it really helps to have the structure and to have peers and classmates who can encourage you to keep going, because sometimes when you're learning on your own, it can get to be a drag trying to figure it all out by yourself. So that's part of why formal educational experiences can be helpful as well. Yes, we are online, fully online. Other questions? Do we have a few minutes? I think we have a few minutes for questions if anybody has any.
I think we
Yeah,
do.
we've got a few minutes if you want to take them.
Okay.
Yep, we're ready.
Nothing outstanding in the chat.
Okay. One thing I was going to say, if you are not in a position where, you can get formal team building skills, you might want to just talk to your boss about taking on a project and developing a team, asking if you can get a team. And that might be one way to get team building. Or sometimes if you, you could coach a kids league or find other volunteer opportunities. Like I think Carina mentioned running a marketing, that her wife ran a marketing project. So are there ways to get it? If you want to brainstorm some ideas, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, great.
Yeah, and Michaela put the link to the survey to let us know what you thought of the session in the chat as well. And I see a lot of people are sharing connections. That's great. Most people get their jobs through the professional connections and people that they know. So the more you can grow your network and connect with other people who share your values and your priorities and your interests, the easier it's going to be to go where you want to go.
I wanted to mention too, I know there's been a number of questions from people about whether or not all this will be sent out to them, but everyone registered will get a copy of the recorded session, the slideshow, any resources that Kathy and Carina have shared. And also, I'm not sure, but we can look into maybe setting up some sort of a live document if people want to share their information. That way, if you want to make connections, and then you don't have to opt into it, just so that you can go back and try to find some of those connections that were made within those breakout groups.